Hermeneutic Reading 2, Linking Parts to Wholes and Wholes to Parts. Let's read. Let's see if you can find out what's going on in this story. This morning, I called Violet. I asked her if she was ready for our trip. I was looking forward to our exciting experience. I went to her house. We got into her vehicle and started out. As we streamed to our destination, we realized that we were not fully prepared for what was about to happen. We realized that we had to move toward the bank, and in a hurry. We maneuvered our vehicle to the right and turned into the bank. We got out with a deep sense of relief. So what's going on in this passage? A couple just realized they didn't have enough money for their trip? Or a couple just realized that if they weren't careful, they could drown? Well, it's obviously the second. What's that you say? It doesn't sound right? Well, let's read it again, this time with the title. Danny and Violet canoe down the rapids. Now, Danny and Violet canoe down the rapids is the title. It's a heading. It's a representation of the whole of the article. It gives you a sense of what the article is about, and maybe even a sense of what the main point of the article might be. Danny and Violet canoe down the rapids. Once you have a sense of the whole, and there's your first one, you bring that sense of the whole into the reading. You carry forward that sense of the whole into the reading, and then you have expectations about what is going to follow. And those expectations structure how you read the paragraph. As you read the parts of the paragraph, the sentences, those parts elaborate the main point or the whole of the article. So, how is it that this title disambiguates this article, this paragraph, makes it clear what's going on? Let's read. This morning I called Violet. I asked her if she was ready for our trip. I was looking forward to an exciting experience. Well, what's the exciting experience? Well, it must be the canoe trip down the rapids. I went to her house. We got into her vehicle. I wonder what that vehicle is. Well, it could be a car. It could be something else. It could be a truck. It could be something else. We started off. We streamed to our destination. Well, why the word stream? Well, rapids, stream, perhaps. We streamed to our destination. We realized that we were not fully prepared for what was about to happen. Maybe the streaming or the going down the river is going wrong. Maybe the vehicle wasn't a car or a truck, but it was actually the canoe itself. We realized that we had better move to the bank, and in a hurry. Well, what bank is that? Well, it couldn't be a bank with money. It's got to be the river bank. We maneuvered the vehicle to the right and turned into the bank, and we got a deep sigh of relief. Well, once we have that title, that sense of the whole, we realize that it is indeed a paragraph about a couple who just realized that if they weren't careful, they could drown. Now, if we had another title, Danny and Violet's Road Trip, well, we'd have a very different sense of this, and this is probably the sense that you had when you first heard it. We'd have a different representation of the whole, understanding of the whole right before we started to read it, and we would carry that into the reading, and it would structure a different way of understanding what's going on. This morning I called Violet. I asked her if she was ready for our trip. I was looking forward to an exciting experience. This time we know that the experience is a road trip. I went to her house. I got into her vehicle. It's certainly not going to be a canoe. And we streamed to our destination. Stream is just a metaphor at this point. We realized we weren't fully prepared for what was going to happen. And we realized that we had to move toward the bank and in a hurry. Well, in this case, the bank is probably a bank with money. We maneuvered our vehicle to the right, turned into the bank, and we got out with a deep sense of relief. Perhaps because the bank was going to close before they were able to take their trip. Well, with that title, it's very clear that this is about a couple who just realized that they didn't have enough money for their trip. So what's happened here? Well, what's happened is that the title is a sense of the whole which you bring forward into the text. And then once you read the text, the parts elaborate the whole. You need to always have a sense of the whole as you're moving forward. It's not enough simply to read each line or each sentence in isolation. It's not even enough to read each sentence one after another, because you've just seen there's two paragraphs and they could have two very different meanings depending upon the title and your sense of what it is about. This is the hermeneutic circle, moving back and forth between parts and wholes. You don't start with the parts, you don't start with the whole, you start at any point, and you're constantly asking questions. How does this part relate to the whole? How does this part tell me what this is about? How does this part tell me what the main point is? You always have some sense of the whole of the reading. It doesn't come at the end. It comes at the beginning, and it gets better and better and better as you go forward. Now, let's take it to a higher level. Same thing is true of a paragraph. Same thing is true of a section. Same thing is true of an article or a book. Once you get a sense of the whole of the paragraph, you bring that sense of the whole forward, and that sense of the whole helps you to understand what the sentence is. You can't understand the sentence by itself. And then the sentences, as you move forward, update your understanding of the paragraph. And again, you're going forward and backwards, forward and backwards, forward and backwards. Now, let's put this into action. Let's actually give this a try with the same paragraph. Remember, we'll start with how to read a sentence. Remember, we said that in hermeneutic reading, you don't just read the sentence and go on. You start by reading the sentence word by word until you get to the end. And then you translate the meaning of the sentence into your own words. Either you do that on a piece of paper or you do it in your head. And then once you translate it, you check it. All right, is there anything in the sentence that wasn't in my translation? And if there is, you update it. That's how you read a sentence. Now, let's take it one step further. Start with the sentence. Read each sentence word by word until you get to the end of the sentence, and you do the same thing. But at this time, now let's add another point. After I read and understand the sentence, I ask another question. I ask, how does this update my understanding of the paragraph so far? I read the first sentence, I have a sense of the paragraph. And then I carry that sense of the paragraph forward. And then when I carry that sense of the paragraph forward, I read the next sentence. Do the same thing as I did with the previous sentence. And now what happens is after the second sentence, I do the same thing. I ask, how does this update my understanding of the paragraph so far? And so what we see, then we go on into the next sentence after we bring the paragraph, my understanding of the whole of the paragraph forward. So again, the understanding of the paragraph doesn't come at the end only. It comes from the beginning, and it gets updated as you move forward and backward in hermeneutic reading. You're going to go back and forth to continuously revise and update your understanding of the whole, the paragraph, the section, the article, in terms of new parts. So there's our hermeneutic circle. Now, let's give an example. Here's our Danny and Violet's road trip. Same thing. Let's go through and actually put this process of iterative reading into process and ask ourselves how it works. How do we go forward and backwards? Let's start. Start with the title, Danny and Violet's road trip. Well, I translate that into my own words. Two people are going on a car trip. Okay? I go forward. This morning I called Violet. I translated it into my own words. Violet and Danny don't live together. Maybe they're friends or dating. That's why he must have called her. I'm making inferences now. And now my question is, how does this update my understanding of what's going on? Well, now it's not just two people going on a car trip. Well, maybe they're friends, maybe they're dating. We don't know. Next sentence. I asked her if she was ready for our trip. Well, title says Danny and Violet's road trip. Now what do I know? Now I know that they're going to take their trip today. I've learned something new. I've updated my understanding of the whole. I go forward again. I was looking forward to an exciting experience. Question. I wonder what will make it exciting. The trip? The person? Is it the road trip that's interesting, or is it Violet? Or is it something else? I go forward. I went to her house. The trip starts. We got out of her vehicle and started off. They got into the car. Well, they got into the car in order to go on to their trip. Everything I do, I implicitly or explicitly link it back to what came before and update my understanding of the paragraph. Two people are going on a car trip. They go on their car. How did I make that inference? Well, because it's a road trip. If I looked at each one of these sentences in isolation, they're not going to tell me what vehicle that is. I go forward. As we moved down the path to our destination, we realized that we were not fully prepared for what was about to happen. Put it into my translation. Well, what could be the problem? The car? The relationship? They don't have enough supplies? What? We realized we had to get to the bank, and in a hurry. Translation: I see they need to go to the bank. They must not have enough money. Now I've made my inference. Now I know that Danny's and Violet on their road trip are going on a road trip, but they don't have enough money. I got that inference from the bank. How did I know it was a bank? Well, because it's a road trip. It's not a canoe, for example. It's not a trip down the river. But here, now a question should come to your mind. What's the big deal? How come they didn't why is getting money such a big deal for them? Maybe they didn't have enough supplies. What's going on? We moved the vehicle to the right and turned into the bank. So they're getting their money. And we got a sense of relief. But still, what's the big deal? Why are they relieved? Why do they need the money so fast? What's happened here? Every sentence I read refers back to something before. I cannot understand each sentence alone. I can't understand them one after another. I have to continuously loop back to what came before and update my understanding of the whole. As I do this, I ask myself questions about things that may seem confusing to me. And even when we get to the end here, we think we've got the main point, and we do. Two people are going on a road trip and find out that they don't have enough money, so they go to the bank. But I also have a question that I've asked. What's the big deal? And that new sense of the whole sets me up for the next paragraph. I don't just go in one direction. Now, once I've got this all done, I've gone through, I've translated, I've understood the paragraph. Now it's time to make a main point. What is the main point? A main point is the take-home message. It's the single message that is communicated across all the sentences in the paragraph. You will not find a main point in any one sentence necessarily. The main point is not in the paragraph. The main point is extracted from the paragraph. You must do something. And what you must do is you must take from all of these sentences and say what is in all of them together in a shorter sentence or phrase. Danny and Violet, who may be friends or a couple, are off on a car trip. They realize they don't have enough money, so they go to the bank. They get their money, and they're relieved. But why is this such a big deal? Now, that's really understanding the paragraph. That's hermeneutic reading. You go from the parts to the whole to the parts.